Welcome to Mental Mettle Coaching, where our mission is to help you learn to thrive in the face of adversity, not just survive it. We are passionate about empowering you to live, play, and work with a resilient and spirited mindset. Hi, I'm Matt Tillman. I'm an ICF professional coach and keynote speaker. My background as an athlete, basketball coach, teacher, and school administrator has equipped me with the insights that resonate deeply with the schools, teams, athletes, and coaches I work with. However, it's my personal journey through anxiety, cancer, and an ischemic stroke in 2020 that truly brings authenticity to my presentations. While learning to speak and write again, I also pursued and earned my ICF coaching certification. Now the practices I embrace are more than theoretical concepts. They're a way of life. Developing a positive mindset is within reach for all, but it requires self-awareness and the repetition of intentional activities. At Mental Mettle Coaching, we'll guide you, your staff, and your students on this transformative journey. Together, let's forge your mettle. This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, where we explore how to forge mental toughness and resilience in every aspect of life. Welcome, I'm your host, Coach Matt Tillman. I'm an ICF certified professional coach with a background as a teacher, basketball coach, and athletic director. But my journey took a dramatic turn in 2020 when I survived both cancer and a stroke. Those experiences shaped my mission to help others grow stronger in every facet of life. Today, I work with athletes, coaches, educators, and anyone who believes that positive mental health is both achievable and a personal responsibility. This podcast is dedicated to helping listeners develop a positive version of toughness, one rooted in resilience, focus, and growth. Whether you're looking to excel on the field, in the classroom, or in life, this is your space to learn, grow, and take action. Join me on this journey, and together, let's forge your mettle. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, metalheads. It is that time of year. I've got so many good episodes with coaches and athletes. I got some really exciting stuff coming up with guests coming up. But this time of year, I know people are out of rhythm, and I thought, there's been something I've been thinking about and writing about that I thought is worth making a podcast about. And I've done it before. Usually around the beginning of the year, I throw something out as a possible New Year's resolution, something to change on a mindset. Everybody does the resolutions about getting in the gym or running and stuff like that. And I think it's really important for us to continue to think about mental strength is the same as physical strength, and that if you want to get better at it, you have to practice it. So it's good to have that sort of resolution for your mental strength. This is your physical strength. There's so many similarities there, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But more to the point, what I think the resolution you should have for 2026, and this is going to go against so much of what you think about toughness, and I think your resolution should be to be more vulnerable. And it's interesting that I talk about this all the time, the idea of positive toughness. And our idea of toughness, coaches, athletes, even just people, not even in athletics, is the idea of toughness is about keeping things out and feeling like, it's really just being really a tough exterior. And, the word that I like to talk about is resistance is not the same as resilience. And resilience is when bad things happen, do we snap back? And do we react in the right way and get back on track? Whereas resistance is you're not allowing things to happen at all. Like you're ignoring things and you're resistant to change, and you don't want to let anybody in. And it's the analogy is there's like, we have two sticks, and we got this one stick can be old and tough, but it's also dead, and we find it on the ground and it looks big and heavy. But when we try to finally, really lean into it, we can break it. and it's not the same, and it's done. Whereas you can take the smallest, thinnest branch off of a tree and cut it off, and if it's alive, you really can't even break it because it just bends and it's resistant and it goes back to shape. And I think that we think sometimes toughness is the old heavy big stick, and it's not. It's that's something that it might be very resistant to a lot of force, but once it does, it's broken. And we want to be more resilient, and I think that vulnerability is a way that we can really lean into this positive toughness. And it's a good time for me to talk about this because I've just hit, this is going to come out late December, and my stroke happened. It's been right at 5 years, and a little over 5 years now. And 5 years ago now, I was in a pretty rough spot, trying to recover from my stroke and trying to learn how to speak and talk again. And I was not handling it well. I was in bad shape, not being able to speak and write, and being really upset about that, and not really accepting that, and thinking, oh, nothing had really changed, and surely this can't be happening. And I was working really hard at trying to get better, but that was not mentally healthy for me because I'd really not accepted the fact all these things had happened. And I wasn't letting anybody in and really changing. And it's easy to look that, I like to say that it's easy to look and say that what prompted my change was hitting rock bottom and getting really, really bad. But sometimes that takes away from my story in the sense that somebody might listen to me and say, well, yeah, that's great. You had this really tough come to Jesus rock bottom moment, and that's where you were able to move forward. And that might be true, but I don't think that the problem with that is, and where it takes away is, it makes it feel like the only way that you can make these huge changes is by hitting rock bottom. And that's just not a good plan. We don't want to drink so much that we become an alcoholic that we need that change because we wake up in a gutter somewhere. We don't want to start gaining 50 pounds just so that we get on the Biggest Loser so that we can, so that we can lose all that weight. That's not a good plan because not everybody makes it off of rock bottom. A lot don't. And that fall to a really rough place is, you'll hear about a story like mine or much worse than mine. And we celebrate that, and we see that, well, that's, a big change like that in your thought process had to happen so that you could change it. It's it's this time of year, so we're talking about the Grinch, and he had to have these ghosts to scare him to be able to do it. And that's they make for good stories, but like I said, not everybody gets off of rock bottom. And we want to be able to look at things differently. And what I'm able to see now from the moments that I was in rock bottom is that what it did for me was it allowed me to be vulnerable. Are you ready to take on the toughest opponent you've ever faced? Yourself. At Mental Mettle Coaching, I work with athletes, coaches, and professionals who are up for a challenge and ready to grow. Through individual coaching, group coaching, and professional development for schools and businesses, we'll help you build confidence, resilience, and a mindset that seeks growth. If you're serious about becoming your best, let's get started. Check out the show notes for my contact information, and together, let's forge your mettle. I had no choice but to be vulnerable. I was reliant on so many people, just not being able to speak correctly and write correctly, and I couldn't calm down by myself, and I needed so much help. So it caused me to be vulnerable, and I think that is, as I look back on it, that vulnerability is what caused me to open up and actually change. And again, vulnerability from a toughness standpoint, it sounds like the opposite. It's like when we see toughness, it's like this fort, that we try to build, and we try to build this big fort around and keep all our spears and guns and cannons aimed outward at anything that might be coming. And we don't want to let anything in. And we build this fort, we shoot at anything that comes in, and we pull up the drawbridge so nothing gets across, and it's like nothing gets in. Well, and that works for a while until something gets in, right? And once something gets in, some enemy gets in over the walls and stuff, then your fort actually becomes something that's keeping you in, right? And that becomes a dangerous thing. And not only that is, like, if you look at it from that metaphor, from this fort, it also keeps you from growing, right? So what we think is this fort that holds us in and protects us is also a prison that blocks this growth, because we can't expand, we can't get bigger. And you have to have that vulnerability to, open up a wall so you can expand, which allows you to be vulnerable. And you just have to be able to do that to grow. You have to be able to look for your weaknesses. And I talk about that when I talk about my 100% metal definition. I always talk about recognizing your strengths and your limitations. And that is like this place we have to live. And as a positive psychology guy and a guy that works with coaching, I'm so often working with people on building their confidence, building their positivity, focusing on what they do well to build it and just grow that confidence. And you have to have that. But you also have to be able to realize that nobody's perfect. And you got to know what your limitations are. And it is this fine line that we have to walk between I'm believing in myself and being really confident in myself and knowing that I have these strengths, but then also believing that I have these limitations and how I can use understanding these limitations are the areas I need to grow in, right? So yes, I can do this, but I also know that I can't do this. And that is so important for us to be able to do, is to recognize both and not just be resistant and be all about toughness and not letting things in. Now, let's be clear. You can't let everybody in. Your vulnerability has to be somewhat of a controlled vulnerability with controlled risk. You can't overshare with everybody, and some people might take it against you, work it against you. But I think that you have to be able to recognize some of the things that you can't do well and have it be a controlled risk with people that you trust, and understanding I can't do this alone. I haven't figured this out yet. How do I do this? How do I get better? I didn't have a choice with some of my stuff. The tough exterior of mine gets stripped away pretty hard with cancer and a stroke, and then having so much anxiety over it. Like, you had no choice. So luckily I did keep the right people around me, though, right? I had family, friends, and some professionals that I trusted that really helped me do this. So it was still a little bit of a controlled vulnerability, and I think that we have to do that. It's hard to do. It's hard to open up, and it feels like we're being soft. But ultimately, I think that it has to be one of the toughest things we can do. And like, we could also see someone, like, this even goes to a physical health standpoint. And, people will be like, well, I don't go to the doctor. That was me. Like, I had noticed a problem. I had the testicular cancer. I hadn't known it was something I probably should have checked out much sooner than I did. And I know now that was something that it was like, it's too far from my heart to kill me, and it's what I don't know won't hurt me. And it's like, that's nonsense. What it was is I was scared of what the answer might be. And that's not tough at all. That's just being scared. And I think a lot of what we have that we feel like we try to project as toughness is just absolute fear of what might happen. And it's just not it's not a long-term strategy for growth. And it's also something that I think something eventually breaks down that armor. Something eventually gets inside. You got this, it's like the chicken house, and it's protecting your chickens until something gets in, and then it's just a bloodbath in there. And it's just, it is not a long-term strategy. We have to be able to think about that and start choosing vulnerability. Again, rock bottom is not a launching pad. That is not a great idea, but you can definitely start to show some choosing vulnerability, because I think it keeps you from possibly hitting rock bottom and things getting so bad. And I think that you have to be able to start choosing some areas in your life that you could use some help with to get better at. And I think that one of the best ways that you could do this is to practice it, is to get an accountability partner. Now, so accountability partners are an idea that we kind of lean into already. So if you've ever lifted, or you've started, say, a running plan where you started for a marathon or a half marathon, you've probably entertained the idea or actually done it where you actually get an accountability partner. Or it could be, I talked to a woman the other day, and she's somebody I've known, and she was like, yeah, I have an accountability partner because we show up and she does jazzercise every morning at 5 a.m. That's fantastic, right? But she knows that I only do it because somebody else is expecting me there. I had this stretch where I was running a lot, and a friend of mine, and we started running. We left. We ran 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We lived on a loop that was a 6-mile hilly loop. It was rough. We lived a mile away, and we just knew. We scheduled it. We didn't text a lot back then. This has been a few years ago. We had the phones, but we just didn't do it as much. And we didn't really chat outside of our runs a whole lot. But the idea was that we knew we lived a mile away, and every other day or every other run, I would run a mile to him, and then we'd finish the loop. And then the next day he would run a mile to me, and we'd go the other direction. And you really couldn't cancel because we didn't text and we didn't chat much, and we kind of made it that way. And it was just like, you knew that somebody was expecting you at, we were running 8-minute miles. I knew that he was leaving his house at 5 a.m. My butt had to be out there at 5:08, right? Or I was going to hear it. And I ended up doing that. I think we did that for over a year. And that helped me so much mentally and physically to be able to run and do that. And I can tell you, I never would have done that because I was not a great runner. I never would have done that with somebody else. And I've had lifting partners where we showed up and we did some really good lifting, and I reached a lot of goals, lost some weight, did stuff with some running or some lifting. And I know that I needed it. And if you don't have an accountability partner, people hire personal trainers to help them get there. Like, hey, I'm going to get a personal trainer because they count on me, or they're counting on me to show up, and we have sessions scheduled, and we do that. And we know that. And we do it like for our financial health as well. If you and your spouse are like, hey, we got to make a budget, and we got to hold each other accountable to do it. So you do that. And if you can't do that, then you get a financial manager or planner or something to help you do that. So when we talk about our physical health, we do it. We talk about our financial health, we do it. But what we never do, or not never, but very few people go and get an accountability partner to work on some of their mental health. And it's just that, again, that connotation we have, that stigma around it, where it's like, oh, we admit that I need help physically or financially, but I can't admit that there are some things I should be better at mentally. And there it is. It's that toughness that we have and that exterior. And if you would just learn to have a mental accountability partner, they just help you do the same things. They help you find your blind spots. They help you check in on your reps to make sure you're doing it. whatever exercises you want to do physically. You could read a book together that's on say confidence or something like that, and it keeps you from quitting on yourself on these things. And you would talk to each other about what your goals are, why you want to get better at it, and it does the exact same thing. So whatever you're wanting to get better at mentally, if you're just wanting to be, a better husband or a better wife or a better parent, but you know that you struggle with your ego, or we could go a long list of things that I've talked about on this podcast, but this is getting in your way. Well, how do I get better at it? Well, you find some exercises and some ways to practice gratitude or build your confidence or whatever, and you say, hey, we're going to work on these together. Hold me accountable to this. It does the same thing. Your accountability partner, and it causes you, and the reason I'm talking about that is because it requires you to be vulnerable with someone. Okay. If you're going to get an accountability partner, of course, you're not just going to pick anybody. You're going to pick somebody that you trust. So you're going to find somebody that you trust on sharing these things to and with, and that would be good. You want to have somebody that's consistent, that is going to show up. Like you might plan on showing up for lifts, you might say, hey, we're going to do a weekly call or text or have coffee once a week and talk about these things. And you also want somebody that wants you to win, that wants your best interest, and vice versa, right? So it's somebody you're going to want to have to do that with and have this accountability partner. Your athlete probably spends hours working on the specific skill set they need for their sport, and they probably spend hours in the weight room building their body. But how much time do they spend intentionally training their mind? Well, building mindset is the key to bridging the gap between the skills that we see and game execution. Well, Mental Mettle Coaching provides individual programs that can help your athlete develop this third and crucial skill set. Coaches, do you dream of guiding mentally tough athletes towards a championship? Kids that are resilient, persistent, and unshaken by setbacks. Well, in today's world, those athletes aren't born. They have to be developed. Many athletes face significant challenges and risk burnout. So how do we foster that mental toughness without overwhelming them? Well, introducing the Ember to Inferno program, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. This series is designed specifically for coaches, offering a deep dive into your own journey of mental toughness and equipping you with practical tools to build confidence and belief in your athletes. Rather than just simply adding more adversity to their life, we focus on creating a strong foundation for mental resilience. You'll learn how to transform a spark of motivation into a blazing fire of toughness using techniques that address challenges like social media pressures, athletic stress, and trauma. Don't just wish for mentally tough athletes, build them. Join the Ember to Inferno program today and ignite the potential in your athletes. For more information, contact me, Coach Toman, at Mental Mettle Coaching. There's a lot of other ways to do this. I think that a really small group Bible study can do that for you. And I say small group on purpose because the more people that are in it, the less likely you're going to be vulnerable. So I know some guys that do that, just a couple guys together, and they just do their Bible study together and talked about what they want to get. That's having a mental accountability partner. If you're not able to find somebody, you don't trust somebody, then you would do exactly what I was talking about on the physical part. That's where you hire somebody like a coach, like a life coach or a mental performance coach, somebody like me to do that. But it's going to help, right? It's allowing yourself to be vulnerable in order to get better. You have to admit that you're like, I am not able to do this on my own, and I would do so much better if I needed some help. It's no different than, again, what you would do if you're wanting to work out or run. You're like, hey, I can't really do this on my own. I really need a push. I need to be able to do that. Well, you would do the same thing. And I'd like to see that become just more commonplace with people. I think that once you start to do it, you're going to be able to see the difference in your life and difference in the way you do things, and just see that in your growth. And I think it's a really important idea. Now, the really cool part about this, when you do start to open up and be more vulnerable, you're starting to accept help. Okay? Once you start to accept help, you start to notice ways that people are helping you, and you see other ways that people are investing in you, whether or not they're just a friend or you hired somebody, a trainer to help you, or a coach or a mental coach to help you to do that. The second you start to do that, you start to see ways that people are helping you. Once you start seeing ways that people are helping you, it naturally leads to gratitude. And I have talked, I'm really leaning into vulnerability today, but if you want to hear me talk about gratitude, just look back through this podcast, because I talk about it all the time. And if you open yourself up and people help because you've picked the right people, you are going to show so much more gratitude. And gratitude is, Cicero talks about gratitude being not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others, as in that once we start to show gratitude, we start to see ways others can help us, the way we can feel a little gratitude towards ourselves because we're putting the hard work in. You start to show those things, and then you start leaning into those things, and you're like, hey, it was okay for me to be vulnerable. I'm going to do that again. How else can I be vulnerable? Who can I open up to? What am I struggling with? What am I not that good at that I want to get better at? And who can help me? And then you reach out and you do it again, and the cycle starts again. And then you go and say, hey, who's going to help me with this? Here's an issue that I have. Here's something I want to get better at. How can they help me? We make a plan. You get an accountability partner. You stick with it. And then you feel really gracious because you've grown. And then the cycle goes. And that's how we continue to get better. And that our abilities and those limitations that I talked about, you got to recognize your strengths and your limitations. You're never going to run out of limitations, but you're going to start to grow and have more strengths and maybe less limitations. And that's what we want. It's a never-ending cycle, of course, because you're never going to be perfect, but we might as well continue to move that way at whatever we're talking about. And so continue to remember. So tying this all up into a New Year's resolution, I think that you need to start with, one, what's a limitation? What's some limitation that you have? What's your armor that keeps you from getting better at it? Okay. Name the limitation. Name what's getting in the way of you getting better at it. Find a way to work on that. Get an accountability partner and start working on it. Start paying attention to what you want to work on, sharing those ideas with somebody, and then practicing gratitude over it. Okay? Find somebody, talk to somebody, work on some areas that you want to get better at, and admit that you want to get better at those. Talk to somebody that you trust, and start building. And make sure that it's about some mental things, some attitudes that you want to get better at, something about your voice and the way you talk to yourself. It could be your confidence or your lack of confidence that's an issue. It could be your lack of focus on controllables. Okay, and you're like, hey, I know I focus on this and I shouldn't. I want to focus on my attitude, my effort, my communication. These are things I struggle with, and I want to get better at. Those are things that you can work on. You can work on your meditation, your prayer, your Bible reading, all these things. All things that would help you in the long run mentally if you worked on them, but you don't. That's where vulnerability comes in with. And I'm telling you, if you adopt this kind of mindset, you're gonna see growth. Find somebody you trust, find something you want to work on, and get at it. And that's my hope for you for 2026, is that you start to see use this New Year's resolution and start to see the benefits of vulnerability. And it would be so helpful that you will constantly be looking for ways to improve and finding people that can help you do that. It's a great thing. It's unfortunate that I had to get so low to be able to get there, but I'm glad I found it. I'm glad I got there. I'm glad it happened. And I'm glad that I'm able to continue to do that because that's the one thing. It's been 5 years. That's the one thing that I have not gotten away from is I recognize the power of vulnerability and not thinking I know everything, not thinking that I'm better at everything, not thinking that everything is great. It's the opposite of what do I need to get better at? Who can help me do that? But doing it in a very controlled and trusting way. And it's just been fantastic, and I hope for that. So thank you so much for everybody in 2025. 2025 has been an enormous year of growth for Mental Mettle Coaching, and I know that my listeners have been a huge part of that, and I'm so grateful, so thankful for everybody that likes, shares, subscribes, and do all those things. Thank you so much for everything in 2025, and I'll ask the same for 2026. Continue to listen, continue to share, continue to like, follow me on socials, suggest my podcast to others, and give me suggestions for guests. I'm so excited for what 2026 is coming up with. I've got some really cool things coming up for the podcast, and I'm not ready to put it out there yet, but I got some really cool connections and hopefully some really good guests coming from it. I'm pretty excited about that. So great year of 25, expecting a lot out of 26, expecting a lot out of you in 26 as well. Practice that vulnerability, get an accountability partner, start working on your own mental toughness, and you will not be disappointed. So thanks for listening. This has been the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Tillman, and always remember to forge your metal. Thanks for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast. Don't forget to tune in every week for more insights and strategies to help you forge mental toughness and resilience. This podcast is brought to you by Mental Mettle Coaching, where we are driven by a passion for sharing knowledge and experience that empowers others to play, live, and grow with confidence. Our mission is to instill a resilient and spirited mindset in our clients, enabling them to confidently face adversity and actively seek new challenges for personal growth. At Mental Mettle Coaching, we offer individual coaching, group coaching, and professional development for schools and businesses. Whether you're an athlete, educator, or professional, we're here to help you unlock your potential and thrive in every area of life. Until next time, keep growing, stay resilient, and always remember to forge your metal.